Hello there everybody, welcome to a Sundsvall that is having awful weather right now, with rain and with snow all together and gray, and well, it's a good time to do a video instead, to sit inside and show some records. I said in the previous video, that was the goals that I had for 2020, that I have gotten a new motivation to do year celebrations. And I thought, why not do a year celebration right here, right now? I don't have all that much 80s years left. I've been showing them a whole lot during these 6 years I've been in the vinyl community. I have one year though that I haven't been showing yet. And that is the first year of this decade, 1980. So I thought, why not go back and show records from this year, 1980. I was going 6 years old that year, and didn't have all that much check on music, other than maybe children's songs. So many of these has been popping up in afterwards. Normally I show in these celebrations I usually show a huge stack of singles and a pretty good portion of albums, but I don't have. I have. This is one of the few years where I have way more full-length vinyls from this year than I have singles. So it's going to be the right opposite. A whole lot of albums and a little lesser singles. But I will start with singles anyway. I may start with one of my earliest memories. Earliest musical memories, that is. I have a memory of this one that where we lived, in the flat that we lived back then, me, my mother, and my father, and then newly born sister. I was laying on the floor in my room, drawing or cartooning in a drawing book or something like that, coloring book, sorry. And the radio was on in the kitchen or something like that, and out of that radio this song came, and it had been stuck with me ever since. So this is one of my songs that I have, one of my earliest musical memories of. Barbra Streisand, A Woman in Love, produced by the Bee Gees. Maybe one of the best stuff that Bee Gees has produced that isn't, but where they aren't singing themselves. A surprisingly good album, actually, this Guilty album. We have this year's Eurovision Song Contest winner that came from Ireland, and the first of two victories in the Eurovision Song Contest by this Irishman, Johnny Logan. What's Another Year? A gigantic hit in Europe back that year. We have some Boomtown Rats, Banana Republic. Really great song. We have maybe one of the more popular Swedish bands this year, That is the band Gyllene Tider with Per Gessle from Roxette. A young Per Gessle. This is one of their biggest hits, När vi två blir en, When We Two Become One. A single that I've been having for many years, eons back. One of the movies that came out this year, I haven't seen this one, so I have no idea what kind of movie it is. Xanadu. The soundtrack, however, was made by Electric Light Orchestra and Olivia Newton-John. I had this album before, as some of you might remember, and I thought it was pretty bad actually, with exception from the singles with Olivia Newton-John that actually was really good. Magic was another song that came out, and also the title track, Xanadu. We have more movie, Irene Cara and the theme from Fame, that later would also become a TV series. And also, holding on with the movie theme, from the movie American Gigolo, Blondie and Call Me. And 1980 was also a pretty sad year for music lovers. As many of you know, some of you might remember, when John Lennon was murdered. And this is one of his, in my opinion, best songs actually. Just Like Starting Over. However, the B-side with Yoko Ono, Kiss Kiss Kiss, is more of a cult classic. It's pretty bad, but it's really fun to have. As one side is really good, and the other one is a good cult classic. Two different kind of songs, you might say. So, the big stack of albums that was released in 1980. Why so many albums, you might ask? Well, as 1980 isn't a year that I remember myself musically, I was too young. As I said, many of them are discovered afterwards. Many of the biggest hits of 1980 were actually pretty much overplayed, and I was a little bit tired of them. It took a while before I realized that 1980 actually was a good year. So I haven't been the best of friends with this year 1980 during my life, but I learned to discover that it was actually really good. I'm usually very fond of one thing when it comes to these from one decade to another. And it was the same when the 80s became the 90s, and that is what these two first years. Normally the music industry stays with one foot in the previous decade when it comes to sounds and so on, and another foot in something new that is about to come in the new decade. It was the same when the 80s became the 90s. The 80s was still stuck in many in the music producers' way of doing music, and it became a little more with house and dance music and so on, a little rockier in some part of the song. So that's what I like, when it's something new and something familiar in the same song. So I discovered a lot of 1980 in afterwards. However, many of them I have bought on full lengths and not on singles. So you can say that 1980 for me is very much about two genres, which will be shown, either soul music or new wave synth pop that have just started to develop. But first, some classics in the more rock genre. Pretenders. There's a lot of bands who had their breakthrough in 1980 also. Pretenders were one of them. This is their debut with Brass in Pocket and so on. And this is a Spanish release of their debut. We have Dire Straits making movies. And we have a really great rock album, or AOR, Jackson Browne, Hold Out. And we also have, see what we have here before we get into these huge genres. That will take a lot of time. We have Bruce Springsteen, The River. Also a very classic album that many of you might know. We have Genesis, The Duke. Might say when Genesis turned from more symphonic prog band to a more radio oriented. Says I, who have not that big knowledge about Genesis in the 70s. As we now go into a massive year of synth pop, when rock punk music turned into, or disco also turned in with a whole lot of more synthesizers, more new wave-ish style, a lot of more experimental with synth instruments, and it was really, really good these first years in synth era. So we have a couple of CDs also. Of course, Ultravox Vienna. Ultravox, one of those bands who transformed from a more punk-oriented band to a synth pop band. And from Ultravox also came this band, Visage, and their self-titled debut, consisting one of the best songs of this year, Fade to Grey. And Visage at that time consisted Mitch Ure, who also was a member of Ultravox. We have another artist that have been being in touch with new wave music for a while, and now took the full step out. David Bowie, Scary Monsters, Ashes to Ashes, and Fashion. Really, really great. Of course, it's Bowie. Here another band who transformed a bit in music style during these years, Human League, Travelogue. At the time when Marty Wares was still a member of the band before he started Heaven 17 and so on. We also have Simple Minds, a band who went the other way, started as a more new age band and going into more rockier style. This is Empires and Dance with I Travel and so on. One of their earliest albums. We have two albums by the same band. They released two albums during this year. OMD, Another band that had their breakthrough this year. First with their debut, that consisted Electricity, and also Enola organization consisting Enola Gay song. Classic synth pop albums. OMD in their earliest form. But I have also said before that I think that soul music during 1980 were as one of the best years that year. Soul music in 1980 was really good this year. Once again, with one foot in still in the 70s soul disco era, and the other foot in with the more experiment with synth instrument and a bit funkier, and blended together it became so fantastic good. So some of the best 80 soul albums I know were released in 1980, like Shalamar, 3 for Love. This is such an amazing album. Or why not Brothers Johnson, Light Up the Night, with the hit single Stomp. This is also amazing funky album. Of course, when Quincy Jones is behind the wheel. Also, another huge favorite of mine, the Spinners, who made an album named Detroit Spinner, and had another big hit with Working My Way Back to You, Girl. This is such an amazing album, Love Trippin'. And we also have Randy Crawford, Now We May Begin. More soft soul from the 80s. And of course, some genuine funk. Prince, Dirty Mind. At the time, a pretty controversial album. So, soul, synth pop, two genres that were the best that 1980 had to offer, in my opinion. A few albums more in more pop rocky style. We have yet another artist that made his breakthrough this year, Bryan Adams, and his self-titled Hiding from Love and so on. And we have Steely Dan, Gaucho, also a really classic with Hey 19. We have, this is a forgotten classic that I really like. This is Seals and Croft, and The Longest Road. This is also another favorite of mine from 1980. And finally, Billy Joel, Glass Houses. It's still rock and roll to me. Really great one. Really great album. And traditionally, when I do this year's celebrations, I'm going to end it all by showing which single that was the most selling single in Sweden during 1980. The most selling album during this year was Pink Floyd's The Wall, which I don't have, as I'm no huge fan of Pink Floyd. The most selling single came during the summer, and it was number one on the Swedish hit chart for many, many weeks. Bill Lovelady, One More Reggae for the Road. This year's big, huge summer hit that also was selling like hotcakes this year. Little overplayed, but still a pretty solid, good song actually. Really, really good song, even though it's a bit overplayed. I don't listen to it every day actually, but it's a good song that I still can manage to listen to when it's played actually. So that was my year, or my music, the music that I have that was the best in 1980. A year that had grown on me during the years, that I didn't have such a good relationship with, but that I've discovered that actually was a whole lot better than I first thought, especially when it comes to synth pop and soul music, and a whole lot of great debuts this year, as I said, with Pretenders, with Bryan Adams, and so on. So I don't know what I will do next time I do a year celebration. I have a whole lot of 90s left. Then of course, it's more CD, but of course I have some of the 70s also I can show. So until next time, no matter where you are, no matter what you do, so take care and so long.